Howdy folks, Congo here, back with another episode of Simple Guides. And in this episode, we'll be talking about the FDR. This is the Tier 10 American Special Ship. You can get this ship in the Armory for 33,000 steel. We will be following a similar pattern with the rest of the Simple Guide videos. We'll be talking about the aircraft of the vessel, upgrades, commander skills, and then I will take it into a random battle and play a game. So with that, let's start with the aircraft. So, at Tier 10, the FDR has Tier 10 aircraft, much like many of the other contemporaries. However, these aircraft are a bit different. They have massive hit pools. I'm talking 3,000, almost 4,000 HP per plane. But they're very unmaneuverable. If you look at the aircraft themselves, they're big aircraft. These are huge aircraft. So, with that being in mind, you have a lot of hit points, but they're very unmaneuverable. They handle kind of like a bus. That means that when you're attacking a ship, flak is the devil. And we will get more into that later when we talk about commander skills, but it is good to know that the aircraft are very big, and so you will suffer from flak a lot more than you would in another ship. So for the aircraft, rocket aircraft, things to note about these, there is no fighters on the attack aircraft. You get no fighters with these whatsoever. You have starting about 21 to 23 rocket aircraft, depending on upgrades. And you get about 11 back over the course of the entire game. So you have about 32 to 34 total. This means that you start with most of your aircraft and you only get a few back. So you want to not lose as many. You want to keep your aircraft. And this is true for all three of your armaments. The FDR very much is somewhat like a Kaga, where you get a lot of your aircraft right at the start. And you get a few back during the course, but that's about it. Other things to note is all of the aircraft strike in waves of 2, so 2 planes per strike. And there are a total of 7 strikes, with about 14 planes in the squadron, give or take. So you have a huge squadron with large planes, and they're very immaneuverable. So this means that flak is super deadly, and you can get clipped by flak bursts when normally you wouldn't, or you think you've dodged it, but the flak burst will still clip one of your aircraft and do huge damage to you. Other things about the rockets is you fire 52 rockets at one time, so you blanket an area. However, they have a very long wind-up time, similar to the Japanese attack aircraft. And the time that they kind of mark their area with the machine gun fire is quite long. So hunting destroyers is not something you'll be able to do in the FDR with the attack aircraft, and honestly with any of them. The FDR is more of a capital ship killer. You want to be attacking battleships, the enemy carrier if you can get to him, or just stationary cruisers who are hugging islands. Those are your main targets with the FDR. Torpedo bombers, as I've mentioned, waves of 2, squads of 14, so 7 strike groups. They drop 4 torps per plane and strikes of 2, so 8 torps total. They're standard Midway American torps, 35 knots, 4.2 damage, 4 kilometers range, 570 arming distance. Very standard Midway torps. If you played Midway, they're very similar to that. Again, you start with about 21 to 23 at the start of the game. You only get 8 or 9 back, so you have a total of 29 to 32 torpedo bombers. So again, you get a lot at the start, you get a few back during the course of the game, but that's about it. There are things that can help you get more aircraft back. William F. Halsey Jr.'s, I think it's called Implacable, his Confederate talent now. Yes, Implacable. This one, this can kind of alleviate that with the 20% reduction to your restoration time, because that is a percentage and your restoration times are quite long. that 20% is useful. However, getting Confederate on the FDR is a lot harder than it is with other carriers. Other carriers, you can kind of do a little bit of damage to a target and go, but with the FDR, you are very dot dependent and just large ship dependent because, like the torpedo bombers, you do drop a lot of torpedoes, but they have this kind of outward curve to them. Whereas on the Midway, it's more narrow. The Hakuru, the Japanese tier 10, is very straight. And then something like the Manfred is also pretty straight as well. And then if you ever played the Audacious torpedo bombers, they narrow inwards. So the Roosevelt's torpedoes are like the opposite of Audacious. They kind of spread outwards. So you want to hit large ships with these torps because you're going to land more because of that spread outward. And more maneuverable ships like destroyers and some of the light cruisers like Minotaur, they're going to be able to avoid these huge spreads because of the torp speed and just the spread out of the torpedoes themselves. And then we get to the main bread and butter of the Roosevelt, and that's her dive bombers. You start with 21 to 23. You get 9 to 10 back, so a total of about 30 to 33. Just with standard skills and stuff, not counting special commanders. They again are waves of 14 or squads of 14, waves of 2, so 7 total strikes. 4 bombs per aircraft, so you drop 8 bombs with 2 planes. Now these are Midway bombs. These are the the big old HE bombs that hit for 11 and a 11.2 K, 66 fire chance. They're huge. The dive bombs themselves are more, and you'll see this in the game, they're more of a carpet bomb, like the British bomb. So you need to give a lot of lead, and the bombs drop pretty slow, so you need to give quite a lot of lead. But if you can get it on like something like a curve first, you can do huge damage and set multiple fires. And so the strategy with the Roosevelt, for the most part, is going to be using your torpedoes to force a repair, and then maybe either getting another flood with your torpedo bombers, or just setting multiple fires with your dive bombers. These are standard American torps, so the flood chance is very low, but you drop 8 of them, so you have a higher chance of getting a flood with just the number you throw out. So that is the aircraft themselves. Now we'll go to upgrades. In terms of upgrades, the first 2 are pretty standard. Air Groups Modification 1, Aircraft Engines Modification 1. Aircraft Engines Modification 1 is very important. One of the things I didn't mention about the aircraft is that they're very slow, and they use boost a lot. They're very boost hungry. So having that extra boost duration is going to be very helpful with that. Third slot, I have Aerial Torpedo Modification 1. This will just bump up my torpedo speed to 37 knots. And this just helps with torping some of the faster ships or just making it harder for destroyers to dodge them. It does increase the arming distance of the torpedoes. And I will go over commander skills in a second because I do have the torp spill. But 570 I find it's usable. It's not terrible. 570 is not the worst, so I'm okay with taking that little bit of arming distance for the speed, because it means you can torp some of the faster ships. If you didn't want to take this, you could take the Torpedo Bomber Modification 1. This gives you 5 extra seconds, and you can line up your torpedo bomber time. And of course, one of the things about the FDR is that once it is fully aimed in, you can maneuver, and it doesn't mess the maneuver up very much, if at all. So you could use this to do some real shenanigans, but that's more up to you. I prefer the torpedo speed personally. Slot 4, Bomber Modification 2. This just gives our dive bombers 7.5% extra health. This is really good. We could take Torpedo Bomber Modification 2. One of the things I didn't mention with the torpedo bombers is you get no heal on them. Unlike the other Tier 10 carriers, you have no heal on your torpedo bombers. You have no heal on any of your aircraft, in fact. So taking torpedo bomber modification isn't the end of the world, but I prefer to take the dive bomber modification because I want my bombers to live a little bit longer so I can maybe push through and get that second or third fire, depending on the situation. Fifth slot is Concealment Systems modification. This just brings down the obnoxiously massive concealment of the FDR from her base 15.86 concealment down to a more reasonable 13.8. It is still quite large, and your area detectability is 11.2. It is 12.45 without Concealment Expert, so it's still quite large, but that surface concealment is huge. 15.8 to 13.8 is the difference between being spotted by a destroyer or slipping away. You're not the slowest carrier, but you're also not, incredibly fast. I mean, 33 knots is pretty average for most battleships in this tier, and most of the contemporary carriers are pretty close in that as well. Oh, there's a train. So having that little bit of extra concealment means you can move a bit closer to the front lines and not need to worry about being spotted, spotted by a destroyer or even just spotted by the enemy carrier's aircraft and getting shot at. And being closer is good, especially in the FDR, because it can reduce your plane turnaround times. As I mentioned, the planes are very slow, so being closer helps with that. And then sixth slot, we have Flight Control Modification 2. This is just 5% speed. Again, slow aircraft, you want speed. Speed, speed, speed. That is the name of the game. In terms of commander skills, I'm using a specialized commander for the FDR. So I have first point, air supremacy. Second point, improved engines. Then I've got aircraft armor and survivability expert. And then for the 4-point skill, this is the only carrier I would say taking enhanced aircraft armor is actually good. Because that 25% damage from flak reduction is actually quite good because you tend to eat a lot of flak in this ship. And of course, this is a special ship, so you can put any commander from any ship on here. In this case, this is my Montana captain. So the flak reduction is very useful for a specialized commander for the FDR. You could not take it and it would still, work. You could still get away with it, but the flak reduction just helps so much. And then I have Swift Fish. This is again torpedo speed. So this boosts my torpedoes to 39 knots. So I have a much higher chance of torping some of these more maneuverable cruisers. And it just makes it harder for battleships to avoid as well. It does push the arming distance up to 570, as I mentioned, but I'm okay with that. It's not the end of the world, and 570 is still very, very usable. In terms of the next 4 points, I took Bomber Flight Control. This is just speed for the dive bombers. Again, as I've mentioned, dive bombers, they hit hard, they have massive fire chance, and you want to use them to kind of set those perma-fires, so having that little bit of extra speed helps, and it does stack with the improved engines. Now, if you wanted to, you could take Proxy Fuse as opposed to Bomber Flight Control. You can take either one of these. Personally, I prefer the Bomber Flight Control. The Proxy Fuse does give you a bit of extra damage on your torpedoes when they hit the torpedo belt, and they will hit the torpedo belt just because of the spread of them. But this does also increase the flood chance of the torpedoes that hit the bulge protection. Not the entire ship, only the bulge protection is what this reduces in terms of flooding chance. So it does increase your chance of flooding a little bit. I just prefer the Bomber Flight Control because either I don't want to use the torpedo bombers as much because I just want to flood and that's it. And when you're dropping 8 torps every 20-25 seconds, you're gonna get a flood on a target eventually. It's not a matter of if, it's when. So with that knowledge, I took Bomber Flight Control because that just means my follow-up is much faster and more speed for these slow planes is better. And then for the last 2 points, I would take improved engines. Again, engine boost duration is exceptionally good on this ship. You have very, very slow aircraft. You want to boost a lot. And then finally, engine techie. This just means the cooldown of engine cooling is much lower. And this just means I can use my boosts more often. So that would be the full 21 point commander I would take, something like this, for a specialized commander for the FDR. In terms of signals, dot damage signals, fire, flood, and then I have a ramming signal. Nothing too incredibly special. So with that, let's take her into battle. So the main target of the FDR is as I mentioned, it is a capital ship killer. You are a capital ship killer. You want to be killing the enemy battleships. You want to be attacking some of the larger cruisers, some of the more stationary cruisers. Those are going to be your main targets. You can go after destroyers, but it is a lot harder to do so. And here we go. So, 4 battleships. It is a mirror matchup with a Roosevelt. They have a Worcester, which is very scary. Henry's not that scary. Hindenburg is alright. Nevsky. Stalingrad is a pretty good target. And then Gearing and Kleber. You don't have a lot of tools to deal with destroyers. So, destroyers are some of the harder ones to attack. Because your rockets have such a massive wind-up time. Your dive bombers take forever to fall, and they're also just dive bombers. You're at the mercy of RNG in that case. And your torpedo bombers can work, but they're slow. So something like this Kleber, I doubt we will be able to torp him. He can just outrun our torpedo bombers. So something like what you would normally do on another carrier would be drop from behind and then drop from the side in like a cross torp. Well, one, your torpedo bombers are slow, so it's hard to do that, but also you have about a 20-25 second recovery time between your drops. So being able to drop from behind and then to the side is a lot harder in something like this. So we will look to see if we can find their battleships. Their Stalingrad's going to be a good target. Possibly their Worcester. We might be able to get a cheeky drop on him. If we can, maybe the enemy Roosevelt, depending on where the enemy goes. If they split, and there he is right there, in fact. So we're going to go for the Stalingrad instead, because it looks like she's pushing up to B. But, you could go for the enemy carrier. If the enemy is kind of leaving it open for you, then you could absolutely go for it. But start of the game, it's unlikely that they're going to leave a nice opening for you to be able to get in there. So you might not be able to. So you see we had to lead the Stalingrad, and we were able to get a nice juicy hit. And that is just the power of these dive bombs. They can do a lot of damage if you get a good hit in. So we're going to go for the Yamatos instead. And as I mentioned, flak is the devil, so when you're moving around some of these ships like Nevsky and such, pay attention to the flak. If you see the red hues from a defensive fire, turn around, go back. Don't strike that ship, because you're going to lose more aircraft. And as I've mentioned before, you don't have a lot of aircraft. You don't get a lot of aircraft back. So aircraft you lose, they're gone. That's it. And that might have been a little too little lead. Yeah, we hit him right in the stern plating. Got a fire, and it looks like he repaired it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the torpedo bombers out and see if maybe I can set a flood. I don't know if I'll be able to get to him. You can see in the minimap, we've got a Stalingrad who's hugging B. So he's going to be a ripe old nuisance. One of the things I should also mention is fighter builds. With the commander skill rework and the buffs to enhanced reactions, a lot of people have been taking fighter builds. They're not that viable on Roosevelt. Your planes are just too slow. So you won't ever be able to actively move your aircraft in front of a strike, like you could on a Haku, for example. Haku is very good at doing that, especially with the legendary. You can really just get in there and deny that the enemy carrier is dropped. You can't really do that with the FDR. Your planes are way too slow, and you're not going to be able to do that. So I was going to strike this Nevsky. This Nevsky is hugging the island, so she would be a good target to strike, but it looks like she's actually moving away from the islands. So I'm going to instead go for one of these Yamatos, because Yamato is legendarily bad AA. So we can kind of abuse that, and especially this one, Hack there, it looks like he's actually stationary. So we're going to want to go for him. Especially because I'm pretty sure he is the one that we hit with the dive bombs earlier, so he has no repair at the moment. He'll have it coming up soon, though, so we want to be mindful of that he's going to have his rep soon. So if we get a flood, he might be able to repair it pretty soon. Where's that booster at? We don't want to sail too close to the booster. There we go, we got a flood. So I want to move to the other side of him. I don't want to fly in the range of that booster, because it will be a very bad time for me if I do that. And it looks like look at the damage numbers, they're not ticking up, so I think this Yamato actually repaired my flood. So we're going to go in for another strike and see if we can get a second flood. I'm going to try and aim more towards the front. It looks like he's going to try and accelerate forward out of it. And there's gearing. Gearing's low, that's good. There we go. And there's a perma flood right there. So we don't need to just, you know, have that extra flood chance. If we just hit everything, then we can get the second flood. And I'm just going to recall those planes, because I doubt I'm going to get a third strike, and not with the gearing and the Nevsky over there. So that is a permanent flood that Yamato can't do anything about. He is stuck with that flood for its full duration, essentially. And it looks like the flood ran out finally, so we're going to try and just give our combo some defensive fighters. Looks like the Roosevelt just recalled his aircraft, though, which is fine with me. And I think I might try and go strike that Nevsky. She is hugging the island, so she's actually a very good target for us to hit right now. Because she's island hugging, so she's not going to have a lot of maneuverability against the bombers coming in. And if we hug the islands here, we can actually deny her from shooting us until we're right on top of her. And I think she sees it coming. Yep. If nothing else, we will force this Nevsky out of her position. Because right now she is being a rifle nuisance for our team right now. You can see somebody has used their defensive fire. I'm not quite sure who it is. I think it's the Henri behind me. So I'm going to just move away from him. Yeah, it looked like it was the Henry's defensive fire there. So that's good to know that Henry has a defensive fire and that it is now on cooldown. I gotta be careful. There might be a Wooster. Actually, the Wooster is spotted way over there, so we're free to just attack this Yami. It looks like she's gonna turn. Ah, no fire. Good hit, though. And there's the gearing. It's good to know where the gearing is. The gearing is over by the Wooster. With these long flight, like regroup times, it is a bit annoying because you do have to kind of like fly out of the AA range. And unfortunately, with this kind of situation where we're at right now, where we're kind of heavy the edge of the map, it's very hard to do that. So, looks like the entire enemy team has moved away from A, except for this one Montana. I might go strike this one Montana, see if we can get her out of here, and then I'm going to move my carrier hull up to this area right here, because I want to reduce my flight turnaround times. I'm going to come over here and see how much health this Montana has, and maybe kill her, so I can move way more closer, possibly even almost to B. Because the entire enemy team, except for that one Montana, is at sea right now. And we just lost our destroyer hunting the Montana, which is not great. Oh, okay. Minotaur killed the Montana. That's really good for us. So now we can just move over to this side. So I'm gonna move towards A. Now they are all grouped up at the moment, So what I might actually do is I might go see if I can find their Roosevelt, see if I can catch her out. All their ships are grouped together right now. I might be able to dive in and maybe kill that Henry, because she is quite low. Although I think she's probably gonna die here, so second thought, yeah, there she goes. There's a Nevsky right there too, actually. I might go for the Nevsky or the Colombo. Colombo looks like she's stationary. I don't want to... And there's the Roosevelt. Oh, Roosevelt's really low, actually. Second thought, we will kill the Roosevelt. Because she's low. No. Okay. She got slobbered. That's fine, she's dead. So their enemy carrier is now dead, which means we have air control. So now we have free reign to basically strike whoever the hell we want. And I think I might try and strike that Colombo. Although, hello, there's a Colbert right here. Kind of forced the Colbert away. I don't expect to land any of those torps. Oh, well, look at that. I did, in fact, land 2. And that's defensive fire from the Nevsky, so the Nevsky's defensive fire is now on cooldown. And we've got this Colombo. She's just sitting here. Oh, I hit a torp on the Hindenburg, too. Oh, look at that. So it looks like that Colombo is sitting stationary. I think I might get a flood on her, so I'm actually going to just scramble dive bombers immediately. Unfortunately, we didn't, but we did hit her with 7 torps. Just really punished her for just sitting there. There's a Yamato off on her own, so I think we're going to strike her. Tell our team to focus that Worcester. That Worcester goes down, we can really just get in there and strike the battleships. I mean, the Worcester is the main thing I'm scared about. If Worcester goes down, then we can really get some work done. She is basically the thing I am scared the most of. As I mentioned, the flak vulnerability of this ship, and a Worcester has incredible AA DPS on top of just a defensive fire and just insane flak damage. So we definitely want to... there we go. That's amazing. Colombo killed their Worcester. So that opens up C-Cap. We can strike that Colombo. We can strike that Yamato now. And I know I'm staying in the AA zone, but it is a Yamato. She is pretty damaged, so and I'm not too worried about her AA DPS right now. And I'm actually just pretty sure I will kill her right here. She's trying to make a hard turn to avoid it, but the problem with doing that is that she's giving side to my team. And I'm pretty sure she just prepared a fire too, so yeah, double fire, that should kill her. She should burn out. There she goes.
Enemy battleship sunk.
So we've got a Colombo and an enemy Yamato and another Yamato. Their gearing is somewhere around here. We know she's low. And I might go strike that Yamato. I think she's actually gonna beach. So she's stuck pretty stationary right now, so that's a pretty good target for me to strike right now.
Our victory is in sight.
There we go. Stationary battleship caught. No fires, unfortunately, but actually, motorcycle torpedo bombers instead. Their battleships are kind of stuck in a narrow choke point. And I'm going to move my carrier hull a bit closer. Because we do have B control right now, I know I can kind of freely move my carrier hull a lot closer. It looks like both their battleships actually grounded at A. You can see the Colombo on the minimap is actually reversing right now. And we know the Colombo just used her fuel smoke too, so we don't have to worry about that coming and hitting us. But I think I'll go for the Yamato at the moment, just because she's an easier target to hit. I am surface spotted, so that is probably the gearing that is spotting me, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. The gearing last time we saw was actually super low health, so I'm not too worried about him at the moment. I know I can kill him pretty easily. So that should be a dead Yamato. She did take some hits from my teammates, and there she goes.
Battleships in 5 minutes.
Turn in, start the run. Unfortunately for Colombo, she has to angle against my Slava and Yamato. So this is going to put her in either. She's going to take my torps, or she'll just die to my battleships. In the meantime, I am going to go find their gearing, and there she is. She's trying to smoke up, but as I mentioned in several of my other commentaries, you don't want to do this, because you make yourself very easy to hit. Unfortunately, these are dive bombers. Oh, and I think we hit 1,000 points. And screen bug? Question mark. Yep. Alright, that's fine. We'll just go into it again. Alright, so we did win. We hit 1,000 points. I think we must have killed their Colombo. Oh, we killed their cruiser. Okay. So 178k damage. 31 torp hits, 37 bomb hits. You know what? I didn't use my rockets at all that entire game. And that's kind of the thing with the rocket planes. They're alright. I mean, they're good. You fire a lot of them. They have pretty decent fire chance and such. But if you're playing the FDR appropriately, you shouldn't need your rocket planes. Your rocket planes are alright, but your dive bombers are just better suited for the role that they do. And your torpedo bombers are just more useful, or your second most useful. So having the rockets is more of a bonus. It's not something I use all the time unless I literally do not have any dive bombers or torpedo bomber planes. They're not good. Even for DD hunting, they just have way too long of a wind up. The attack actually takes forever before it fires their rockets, so DDs have a century to avoid or angle or whatever. So yeah, mostly torpedo and dive bomber damage, 178k, 2 kills on those battleships, or on the battleships. I think it was 2 battleships I killed. Couple fires, some floods. I killed 2 Yamatos. Only 17k dot damage. Most of it flooding though, surprisingly enough, because we managed to catch that one Yamato with a perma flood, because she just burnt her repair, and we were able to get a second one. And that's kind of the strength. One of the strengths of the FDR is that, you have such large squadrons that you can actually get a second flood or a second fire if somebody repairs one immediately. But most of our damage just came from the Alpha. 95k from dive bombers, and 66 from torpedo bombers, mostly on the battleships, a little bit on some of the larger cruisers, and we hit one of their destroyers with 2 torps, which is actually kind of surprising. I wasn't expecting that. Team score-wise, 1.8k base XP, third on the team. So we definitely carried our weight. We definitely helped our team win. We managed to... I guess their carrier got caught early on from something, and he was pretty low health, so had the Slava not lasered him with his Slavic accuracy, we probably would have killed him too, but it didn't really matter. I mean, what mattered is he was dead. I mean, I would have liked to got the kill, but he was dead, and when he was dead, that basically gave us full air control, and their entire team just kind of pushed into one section of the map, and made it very easy for us to just push up. Had the game not ended, I would, or what I could have done is pushed up to B sooner. It would have reduced my turnaround times, but it wasn't a big deal. And then of course the gearing coming behind us was not a big deal for us. We knew he was low. We spotted him earlier on, sub 1,000 health or something like that. So we knew he was low. So being spotted is... You don't want to be spotted by a destroyer, but if you know the destroyer is a one-shot, then it's not too terrible. It's not the end of the world. And if you know where he is coming from, like where I knew he was coming from, I knew he was coming from the south. He was last spotted on that side of the map. The best thing you can do, and this is kind of demonstrated in my Solo Warrior Midway video I posted a while ago, is you can just sail away from the destroyer. As long as you sail away from him, he's going to have a hard time torping you. And if he can't torp you, he's not going to have enough time to just gun you down. So if there's nothing else that can shoot at you, no other battleships or cruisers that can shoot at you, if you just sail away from the destroyer and don't let him get close enough to torp you, then he's not a massive threat. You can have time to kind of whittle him down, or just hope somebody else on your team deals with him ahead of time or beforehand. Or in that Midway game, for example, I just ignored him until time ran out and we won anyway. But that's the Roosevelt. It is very much a matchmaking dependent carrier. You were very dependent on having a lot of battleships or a lot of super cruisers on the enemy team, and if you don't, then your potential to do damage is very limited, as you can't really strike some of the smaller stuff. You can strike them, but you'll have a hard time hitting them, and it's way less consistent as opposed to the bigger ships. So with that, I hope you enjoyed. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.